Welcome to the Real Estate Mindset Podcast, hosted by Erik Nelson. Throughout this series, Erik explores the mindset behind why certain investors are so successful and how we can learn from their achievements and failures. Enjoy the show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Real Estate Mindset Podcast. This is your host, Erik Nelson. And today I have my brother as a co-host, Ben. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And we're pretty excited for the guests tonight. We were kind of just chatting off the show. We have a lot to talk about. So this is going to be a good one. Bethany Finch, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate being here and getting to meet both of you guys.
Yeah. So first thing we do is we'll just say, can you give us the background, right? Give us kind of the couple of minutes of where you came from, what you're up to, and then what ultimately led you to real estate.
Okay. Well, so let's see how to sum that up. 30 seconds.
No, you can take 5 minutes. You're never going to make it in 30 seconds.
That's right. No, definitely not. I was a foster kid, raised by a single mom, ended up going to the foster care system. And through that, learned quickly there's always a workaround. So it led me to an entrepreneurial path at the age of 12 and just kind of kept going and didn't really fit between the lines of society as a whole. So in doing so, I did a lot of things differently and backwards as far as society went, and continued to, run businesses for myself and move that forward for our family. One business, I literally even ran it as a loss for years, just so that we would have all the tax benefits for our family to help provide the income when our kids were young and we were trying to raise them. So that ultimately, I kept finding new ways to make more money and scale it so that it was doing more for me instead of me doing it for that. And that ultimately is how we got into real estate, was just one business after another. And we still have 4 of them going, but yeah, so American Made Home Solutions is our real estate part of the business. We also have a credit hacking business, a single family renovation business, and an executive rental business.
Yeah, we kind of talk about this offline. There's a lot going on. So
yeah, you got to love that.
I have a couple of things to dive in, maybe personally, and feel free to say, you'd rather not talk about it. But for me, when you say you went through the foster care program and then you were kind of wired differently. I think I hear that a lot about entrepreneurs that were a little maybe wired differently, but to go through that system and come out as firing in all cylinders, I'm going to do this and kind of hammer towards, like you said, make your money work for you. That's so cool. So I can imagine what it was like. I'm not even pretending to assume anything good or bad. It's just an interesting background. So can you share a little bit about it? What was your experience propel you to be an entrepreneur?
100%. So being raised by a single mom, my mom did and tried her best. Obviously, she always had the choice to abort and she didn't, right? So I always had a huge level of respect for that. But she didn't have very good skills and didn't have family and just tried. So when push came to shove and things didn't go the right direction, you couch surf, you try to do everything to stay out of the system, and you just find ways to, okay, how am I going to eat today? What am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And every time the Lord always provided. He always showed me another opportunity, another meal, another way that I could get clothes for this next school year and whatnot. And so I remember picking strawberries to cover all of my expenses for a whole school year. I remember sports was an out. So I knew exactly how much it was going to cost for every single road trip and every single uniform, all of that, and how much money I needed to earn. So I would work evenings, weekends, summer times, that kind of, and I didn't really grow up watching TV, didn't even really have a TV in the house. And so when you're busy doing that instead of sitting in front of a TV, I learned a lot of skills. I interacted with all kinds of people. I was always seeking different community programs that were offered to young people and things. Actually, some of the best coaches and mentors that I had in life early on were from those programs. And they just said, look, if you want to do something different, you have to look different. You have to think different. And so what would that look like? And so some of them walked me through it. And thankfully, a couple of them actually said, Bethany, don't go in the military. I know you want to, but don't do it.
Yeah.
And that was probably for the best. They realized I would probably not have been a good fit in the military. This color within the lines. Yeah, that's not really me. So.
Well, it sounds like that sort of has impacted how you have built your business and how you've built sort of what you're giving back to in the community as well. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about what you've built and what you're working toward?
Yeah. So one of the things is America was founded on small business. I mean, the entire economy when we broke off from England was small business, trading and bartering and establishing all of that. And so once I figured out that the tax laws were written for business owners, it's like, well, okay, I just need to make a legit business so I can get all these write-offs because I don't want to pay any taxes. So it was, in my mind, it was just another workaround. Then I learned that 501c3s, I didn't really understand some of these organizations that helped me growing up were considered a nonprofit. I didn't understand what that meant. So when I was volunteering, got really good education about 501c3s and how those work. And so I just determined that everything I did in my life, I was going to not just tithe on my money, but also on my time. So every project we've ever done, every community we've been in, we always have a give back portion. So some of the funds have gone to help start retirement accounts for pastors. Some of our project, because we work with workforce housing, specifically slated for communities that are in need of transitional housing, we help those organizations and county programs set up transitional programs. We actually help them write the contracts. We help them do all of that and then provide housing. We also work to provide first-time home buyers and that financial literacy education. Many of them have no idea that there's available programs out there. So for us, it's a lot of education and working hand in hand with those 501c3s. One of the markets we're in up in Jonesboro, they're just starting to have a homeless problem. And it's hard to imagine, but it is stoppable. It is. Most people don't realize it's a lot of vets that are coming back with a lot of PTSD and aged out foster care kids. Once a kid turns 18, even if they're still in school, that check stops. So a lot of times those foster kids get pushed out of the system and they're homeless in the middle of a school year, even sometimes. So what we've done is we're working with the city hand in hand. They've got a vets village already going, and we're helping them build out actual programs for these vets to actually do some transitional stuff. And so our mission at American Made Home Solutions is to actually create sustainable growth in every single community we're in. And we do that by working in collaboration with all the other groups and organizations. We don't need to make our business the number one. We need to help build everybody else's business. And in turn, we believe God will honor that and he'll bless that. So
yeah,
wow.
I mean, there's a lot in there. And first of all, kudos. That's really cool to hear. I mean, this is an incredible start to this interview. I have so many questions, but I guess two parts, right? So the first thing is thank you for all that you're doing. I mean, obviously you're making an incredible difference, but you sort of started by saying like, you needed to make a small business so that you could take care of those tax advantages. Like, I guess what I'm driving at is how can other people sort of follow in your footsteps and how could you pitch it so that it's one is giving back to community and two, like has a benefit for you as well? Do you know what I'm asking?
Yep, I do. So there's always the initial write-off for any cash donations, but you can actually also write off resources. So for instance, if you, one of the financial literacy programs and things that we were working with when the schools all went to virtual, right? We were creating a virtual financial literacy program that we were going to give to the schools. That can all be 100% deducted. So any resources like that, material resources can be deducted as well. But in a bigger scale aspect, what people don't stop to think about with the advantages of the 501c3s are recognizing that what goes around comes around. So we're in the city planning office a lot, getting permits, right? We're in the building and all of that. So we're hearing a lot of different things. If they're already seeing us, they're seeing our name, they're seeing our faces, and we want to get a building project done, but then they're also seeing that we're helping them to say, stop homelessness. Do you think there might be a little bit more willingness on their part to help me get that board meeting taken care of, to have that planning go through a little faster, to have those inspectors show up when they know it's going to benefit them directly? There are certain tax credits that we can sometimes negotiate with the cities or the counties. And sometimes it's a relief of, property taxes. Other times it may be a business tax that we get relief on. I've learned everything is negotiable. So if I don't like something, it's like, no, I'm pretty sure it should go like this. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay.
Well, it's such an incredible way to think about it too. And really just listening to your story and to break it down as an abundance mindset, right? Like the ability, obviously this is all relationship built. And I think a lot of us that have been either inside or outside of this community and this vocation, but also just in business in general, successful people tend to, for the most part, to realize that abundance mentality exists, that there's enough for everybody. There's more than enough for everybody. And the more that we give, ultimately, the more that will probably come back to us. And a lot of that is based in relationships and helping other people. So that, I mean, honestly, I'm blown away. I'm inspired and I'd love to help you however I can.
Yeah, well, and that's actually why how the IRS tax code was written. People don't understand. It was written to spur on more economy. It was written for that abundance mindset. Because the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, right? All of them, yes, they were trying to save on taxes, but in the same return, they're also building libraries and doing all these other community things that keep on giving and keep on giving and keep on giving. So it sustains that economy.
Oh, yeah. So I do land use development as well. And I like in the city and county planning office. And it's interesting, like what you said, it was super true too, is people who come in there who are kind of like the clients that maybe I don't really like personally have a really harder time getting their projects through. If you're there to have a positive impact, it goes the opposite way too. If you're there and you're a jerk, it's all personal things. It's all relationship based. Even if it's based in city code, the code requires a vote from a board, and it requires, speediness from your planner, all those things. So what Ben said was perfect. It was like an abundance mindset. It's like we can all help each other. What goes around comes around is what you said. Super true. And that's such a cool thing to hear you be successful and freely give of your time and your money, knowing that in all likelihood, it's going to come back around, which is so cool.
Well, it ties into something that you mentioned before too, is you mentioned building sustainable growth. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about that, because I think sustainability, ultimately this like perpetual motion machine that you're trying to put energy into the system and continue it moving along. Like a lot of that comes from, again, that abundance mindset and how much you're willing to put in and trust that a lot of that's going to come back out. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what do you consider building sustainable growth?
If you think about scales of economy, right? The economy is set that to have more jobs, right? Money's got to be put in to create the jobs. And then once the jobs are there, then the people have the money. So then they go spend the money and it comes back around, right? And they make more products and then it's just a cycle, right? So people don't realize that that's actually God's economy as well. So in the Bible, he actually talks about where a rich man had all these barns and he just built more and built more. Well, then he died and he didn't even get to enjoy any of it because he was too busy just building more barns. The point wasn't that God wants you to store up all your riches. The point was you have a barn to fill it up so that when the time of need is there, you're to give it all out. And then as you give it out, he fills it all back up again. And then you give it out and he fills it all back up again. And he continues to do so. So that's the scale of economy. That's why if you look at the rich people that are in the Bible, he did that for a purpose. There's always a purpose behind it. So when we stop and look at our own communities, we had a really good example of this. So you guys see this right now. Lots of hurricane recovery, lots of flood recovery, fire recovery right now, right? All these storms recovering. We had the nation's largest, most deadliest landslide happen to my neighbors. I lost 43 of my neighbors in that landslide. It was horrifying. Saturday morning, all of a sudden, get the emergency. I have a bunch of EMT friends and to get the emergency broadcast coming through. And it was just absolutely devastating to our area. So when we first go out there, of course, it's chaos. People are running everywhere. Everybody wants to help, but nobody knew how, right? You have certain people that are trained in emergency management and others that are just trying to do their job, firefighters, policemen, this and that, right? But each one of them have their own hierarchy. In the meantime, you have all the rest of the people that are just immediately there because everybody wants to help. So you have to have someone that connects the dots. You have to have someone that says, hey, you go here, you do here. I mean, that's one of the first things they tell you when you're doing a CPR. Immediately tell someone, go call 911. You have to direct people. In our communities, there's all these different things that have to happen. So when that mudslide hit our area, me and 4 other friends jumped in and said, okay, this is what we're doing. And over $1 billion in resources, we were able to get out and get back into our community. And immediately, for 3 years, it went on. get those resources out. Every single day we had to change the emergency workers because their gear was so covered in bacteria. They literally had to throw their gear away, and we had to resupply them every single day. So we set up outfit stores. We set up immediate stores for the families that were now displaced. We set up shelters. We set up all kinds of things. We had to work with all the different groups coming in. We had to organize volunteers. We set up schedules. And all it took was somebody saying, okay, what can you do? So we just start cataloging what can people do. And that's what the Neighborhood Watch, that's what the police has been trying to do. Just going and asking those questions, asking, if your city is starting to see more of a uptick in homelessness, asking, what can we do about this? How can we go out and reach them? Working with some of our local churches. And every week we set up basically portable meal stations that they could come to and they could get food. And then we started having conversations with them and we start reaching them. But you just got to see a need, fill a need.
Yeah, I love that last thing you said.
Somebody should do something about this.
Right? And it's like, I'm pretty sure that somebody is you.
They should do something.
Yeah.
Or they're doing it wrong is even better. It's like, who's they? So yeah, that's an awesome lesson. And again, I mean, this is really cool to listen to. Kudos to you. I mean, I love your style. Obviously you're a leader, but I love that you take action. And even if that action is selfless, that's so cool. So Bethany, let's shift gears a little bit to your professional world. Can you walk us through maybe just like a couple minutes on each business, what it does, how it operates, and basically how you thinking behind them?
We're multifamily syndicators. So what that means is we go out and we buy apartment homes, but we utilize the everyday working person who wants to invest in apartments, but doesn't want to do any of the work and doesn't know how or any of that, right? So they invest their funds into the property with us. So they come collaborate with us, basically. They don't have to know anything. We teach them everything. It's 100% passive to them, but they get phenomenal returns that they would never get, right? There's most of our multifamily syndications, they're getting double-digit returns and 1.75 to all the way up to 2.5 times multipliers. So that's what we do on the multifamily side of it, where we're actually doing that. On the single family renovation in those same communities, remember, we're looking for sustainable growth. So in those same communities, apartments is workforce housing, not Class A, right? But the rest of it is. And so there's always a need for more workforce housing for single families when they're ready to leave those apartments. So we're always looking to renovate single family homes that we're already in those markets doing. And so what we can do then is we can provide our tenants with a home ownership opportunity. After they've been with us for a year, they have the opportunity to go through our financial literacy program, learn how to get qualified for a loan, and then qualify and earn some sweat equity like Habitat for Humanity does. Basically, they do the same thing on a property with us. When they do that, it allows them to step into a home, their first time home, obviously, but now they've got a tremendous opportunity as well. So that's why we still do the single family. It also creates some quick capital as well, so we can move that pretty quickly and use it throughout the business. And then our credit hacking business ties into both. We saw so many of our contractors struggling, phenomenal guys that know a ton about their skill set and know how to do it, but terrible when it came to business. And the reality is, it was true of many, many pastors also. And it wasn't that they would necessarily have bad credit. They wouldn't necessarily have bad credit. They just didn't know that a church is a business. It's a not-for-profit business. And people don't understand that. And so the same is true, all these contractors. And a lot of times they would, use their personal credit to try to fund their business. And it's not scalable and it doesn't work. And they were just constantly working like dogs instead of letting their money work for them. So our credit hacking business is that financial literacy, teaching people how to establish credit on the personal side and the business side, and which is the right way to use it and the best way to scale that. So we can teach people literally how to pay off the debt they have right now with no more money than they're already making.
So I guess that's the final business we haven't really touched on. So what is your executive rental business?
Yeah.
Can you describe that a little bit?
Somebody coined the term executive rental, but it means different things for different people. Corporate rentals is a little bit more what most people would probably think of. Executive rental just means you're not doing a night by night basis. So it's a short-term rental. It's less than 12 months. But it's not like 1 or 2 nights. It's usually 7 nights or longer. And oftentimes the average is 3 to 3 months, 3 weeks to 3 months. And so you're catering more towards traveling professionals. It used to just be mostly traveling nurses and doctors. Now it's traveling IT professionals and corporate execs and different remote workers.
Well, Bethany, the second part of the show is based on mindset. And I think we can go deep if you want, but there's no pressure, there's no wrong answer. So we just kind of fire a bunch of questions at you. We'll go back and forth. First question I always ask is, what is your morning routine?
Well, it's usually waking up and arguing with God. I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to be up yet. I'm pretty sure this is not the time to get out of bed. I am not a morning person, and yet I'm forced to be. So it is, no joke, I do. I argue with him all the time. I'm sure I'm supposed to feel better than this. And I lose the battle every time. So after getting up, I always have a quiet time. So years ago, it started out as about 30 minutes, and now it's about an hour, where I have my Bible time and devotions and prayer time and just kind of focused on, okay, what do I need to do to this day, and kind of setting the priorities. And then it's usually in the pool or trying to do some land exercise. I call it land exercise because it's not in the pool.
Some land exercise.
I actually have one broken hip and the other hip is replaced. And so I need to be in a pool about 3 days a week.
There you go. A couple of things you said was that you used to be 30 minutes and now it's an hour. So it's really cool that you recognize how valuable that time is, and it's actually grown over time.
You mentioned sort of in the pre-show, and I think all has been there. We ask, what's your biggest mistake and or what's your biggest learning? Something that you can pass along through all of your experience. If you can enlighten us a little bit to something that you've learned along the way.
So I believe the lessons that we learn from the most have the biggest price tag. 2 lessons that stand out. One was early on in my single family flipping. I knew enough to make sure I had contracts in place and make sure I had an inspection period. And I knew that much, and to do a sewer scope. So in this particular situation, I had all that done, but I had my contingency period up until 4 o'clock on the Friday of closing. We were supposed to close at 5 on that day, but I had till 4 o'clock. So my sewer scope guy couldn't get in there until like 3:30. And so he finally got me the report at literally like, right before 4 or something. And he's like, he calls me up, don't pull the plug, and I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, cancel that contract. Don't do it. And sure enough, the entire sewer line from the city all the way to the house was completely collapsed. And in this case, it was in the city of Seattle, where they require you to hire their city employees at their wages. And you have to pay them to close off the street and run the flags and to do this and to do this and to do this the whole time you're working. And they get to determine how long you get to work, not us. So the person who came behind me, it cost $85,000 to do that one repair. That lesson I will never forget, but that's not even the worst one. The worst one, I knew enough to be dangerous, and I knew to seek out help. So I am in Savannah, Georgia, visiting my niece. I see a property that would be amazing for student housing. I've never done student housing at that point. So I just lock it up, get it under contract, and I'm figuring I'm going to go find somebody who can teach me, and then we'll have this deal and it'll be great. So I get it all locked up. I'm visiting with my niece. I'm talking with one of the local law schools there. So there's a really big art school there. My plan is turn into student housing and sell it to them. Well, I'm talking to this law school, basically trying to get some free advice, right? And get this information of how to do this and what to do this. Well, I go back home and I let my contract lapse. I can't quite pull all my ties together to make it happen, get out of my contract. Probably a month later, I hear on the radio that law school purchased my contract that I let go. I had it under contract to purchase it for $2 million. And remember, I was going to renovate it and then sell it back to the college. They made $64 million. $64 million. I am not forgetting that ever, right? Because I recognized an opportunity. I'm pretty good about recognizing there's a deal there. I don't necessarily know how, but I know there's a deal there. And I trusted my gut to get it under contract, but I didn't follow through, right? That follow through cost me $64 million.
So the next question we ask is, what's a mindset tip that you can share with our listeners?
Fear is simply a lack of knowledge. When we're afraid of something, there's always a lack of knowledge behind it. So when you're fearful in business, usually it's just a matter of finding the education. Every time you are fearful about something, just step back for even 5 seconds and just say, what knowledge do I need here? Because if you do that, you'll be able to overcome just about anything. And I may not be the smartest person in the room. I may not be the fastest or the most glamorous. But the one thing that people have always said about me is that I'm tenacious. I will find a way. I will figure it out. If there's a will, there's a way. That's Bethany. That's what they'll say. But it's because I don't want to live my life in fear, right? Life is way too short. I've lived a long time and I don't want to miss out on anything.
Well, and I think this is an amazing way to wrap this up is we ask, what is your definition of success, or what makes you or people around you successful?
I would say that the definition of success for me is not just me, but those around me living each moment to the fullest. So success isn't a number. It's not a price tag. It's not what you own, or it literally is living each moment to the best you. Because if you're living you, the best you, and everybody around you is living the best you, think about what an amazing community we've got going on. That's sustainable growth.
Oh, that's so good.
That's great.
Well, Bethany, this has been an incredible show. I mean, thank you so much for everything you do. I mean, this has been a great show. We're so grateful to have you on. So the last thing we always ask, of course, is how can people get in touch with you?
I did give you guys the links. I've got a free download that I give out to folks. If you're interested in investing in multifamily and getting those great returns, don't know how, don't know where to start, don't know any of that, I actually give out a free checklist on due diligence. What, as an investor, what you should do, what you should look for, how to know if it's a good deal or not. I actually have Show Me the Money. It's a link, and I've sent it to you guys where you can actually see how to not just pay off debt, but how to increase assets within, whether it's your church, whether it's your business, whether it's your personal life. And if we all had more resources, as long as we're willing to do something with them, right, our entire economy is enriched for it. So LinkedIn is usually the best way to find me and to reach out to me.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys. No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Hope you got your listeners found some value out of something.
Oh, yeah, there's lots in there, I'm sure. But I did myself too. So this is awesome. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.